All right, let's talk pelvic alignment and diastasis. So, why is it that your pelvic alignment could be affecting whether or not your diastasis is getting fixed or not? Well, when you have your pelvis tilted anteriorly, this tends to place a lot of pressure on your abdominal wall. So if you are a mom that has a diastasis that just won't seem to heal, starting from your belly button and down to your pubic bone, so this lower space down here, if you have a diastasis that just will not heal, one of the things you need to consider is, what are you doing with your pelvis? Are you standing with your hips dumping forward or in an anterior pelvic tilt most of the time? And most of us women do have a tendency to be in that pelvic alignment, okay? So this is caused primarily from your hip flexors becoming very tight. So during pregnancy, you have that big belly out in front, and what that does is it pulls on your pelvis. It starts to shift your pelvis forward, which causes your hip flexors to get very tight. It causes your glutes to shut down, and your core, your deeper abdominal muscles are shut down because they're getting stretched to make way for your growing baby and your expanding uterus. So you've got your hips tilted forward, you've got this big arch in your lower back, and you're slumped forward like this. All of this can contribute to poor posture and tight hip flexors. Now in postpartum, that posture can carry over into postpartum. So most of us will carry our kids out in front, and that reiterates that pulling out in front. So your hips stay in that anteriorly tilted position, which causes the hip flexors to stay tight. It causes you to have that large arch in your lower back, and you also have a tendency to slump forward and squeeze your glutes. All of this places a lot of pressure onto that lower abdominal wall, which could very well be why your diastasis just won't fix itself, okay? So how do we correct this? First and foremost, I want you to understand that healing or fixing your diastasis is so much more than doing core exercises. You know, there are so many programs out there that just give you all types of core exercises to do, but if you're not fixing the underlying issues, then doing all the core exercises in the world won't fix your diastasis. So if you are someone who stands with an anterior pelvic tilt, you have to correct that first and then start strengthening your core, okay? So how do we do this? Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is relax your glutes. Notice if you are constantly squeezing your glutes a lot. And most moms have a tendency to do this because they don't have adequate core strength. It was never restored after pregnancy, so the glutes like to take over to help create a sense of false stability for the abdominal muscles, okay? So let your glutes relax. The next thing is shift back, okay? So you're like this. You're going to want to shift your weight back so that your weight is distributed from heel to toe evenly, but you're also centered and stacked at the center of your body, okay? And then the next thing to think about is taking your pubic bone and pulling it up towards your chin to get your pelvis into a more neutral alignment, okay? And then some other factors to consider are, like I mentioned before, strengthening your deeper abdominal muscles, but you'll also want to work on strengthening your glute muscles, strengthening the internal external rotator muscles of your hip, and strengthening all of the muscles that surround your pelvis and releasing your hip flexors. Because if you don't work on releasing those hip flexors and creating strength and stability elsewhere, those hip flexors will remain tight and you'll continue to stay in this anteriorly tilted position with your pelvis, okay? So even if you go and you try to shift, your pelvis into a more neutral position, you still have to do the work to release the muscles that are too tight and strengthen the muscles that have been weakened over time. So hopefully that helps you understand that healing or fixing your diastasis postpartum is not just about what core exercises you do.